I stay up here on stage and welcome our next speaker. We have with us, also on Standing Up to Putin's Authoritarianism, a message from Free Russia. We have Leonid Volkov here. Welcome to the stage. Thanks. You're Alexey Navalny's chief of staff, but you're also leading voice on your own in the Russian opposition. It's a real great pleasure to have you here. Yesterday, as many of you in the audience saw, we had a message from Alexey Navalny to the first day proceedings, and it's great then to have you on stage here for the second day to discuss around our theme of defending Ukraine. I also want to remind again that you can, I can already see questions popping in. People have learned the system. Again, if you put your name in, I might also read that aloud next to your question. But Leonid Volkov, I will basically start, of course, with you, asking you what message do you want to share with us today, particularly on the war in Ukraine?
I would say that the most important thing I really want everyone to know that this is not true that Russian people and Russian population generally support Putin's war against Ukraine. This is just not true. Russia is a huge country. It's a complex society. Many people still follow the narrative of propaganda. Many people feel fear. They just don't know what to do in these circumstances. No one expected like a major war in Europe to happen. But the narratives that Putin is created and also actively exporting to the West, that like everyone in Russia is just like supporting the war unanimously, that's clearly not true. Over 16,000 people have been arrested for anti-war protests in the first weeks after the invasion, which means that hundreds of thousands went out to the streets. Then, now the sanction for like anti-war protest in every form, even for posting something online, would be like up to 15 years of imprisonment. This doesn't make us to stop protesting, though. We just have to find like different forms and formats for the protest. Putin made public expression of dissent in Russia impossible. You can't go for a rally, for a strike, you can't post anything online. But this dissent has not gone. It's swept under the carpet, it's boiling there, it will erupt at some point of time.
So that actually leads me to my second question, is this Putin's war or Russia's war? That's of course something that's widely debated, also with sort of opinion polls that showed a relatively large support also in the Russian population, but yeah, your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, we have all seen these opinion polls that pretend that like 85% or like 75% support this war. They have to be dismissed entirely. So when someone is doing a phone call, a pollster is doing a phone call and talking to someone and asking, do you support the war or not? And they answer no, they know that they are liable for up to 15 years imprisonment. It's just not social science, that's ridiculous. We are conducting polls of ourselves, so we have the Anti-Corruption Foundation, we have like a polling department as a part of our operation. The response rate for phone surveys was about 20% before the war and has dropped to below 7% after the war has started. So the people are just too scared. People don't talk to the pollsters. People don't express their opinion. What we do to figure out about the actual perception of the war in the society, we try ourselves to ask those questions indirectly. Mm-hmm. For instance, last week we did a poll when we asked, imagine oil prices are up. They are up, and there are additional funds in Russian budget. So, where would you like to spend it? Now we are asking this question to ordinary people in Russia. We are doing like a random selection of during our poll, and these are people who are subject of this Putin's enormous propaganda, which explains that this is the world not against Ukraine, this is the Third World War against NATO, against the evil West, where like those gays and lesbians are going to destroy our peaceful order of Orthodox Russia. So the propaganda is telling them like 24 hours, 7 days a week, and now we ask them like, where do you want to spend extra funds? So, your guess, how many of our respondents have chosen like military spending, like increased military spending because of this enormous threat? What's your guess?
I don't know.
It was 6.8%.
Okay, yes, low.
So, which tells a lot about like the actual mood of the society. So this is definitely Putin's war, and despite the fact that there are some people, yeah, we have to admit it, that have been following the propaganda narrative, this is, in my opinion, more like a form of a self-defense. Putin did a hard job during the last 20 years to make people not follow politics. Like, there was that strange form of a social contract. The government delivers like a relatively decent quality of life, like living standard, and people don't follow politics, don't ask questions, allow them to steal money like enormously, don't question their corruption. And this was kind of like a social contract with a majority of the population, with a silent majority, this political swamp. Now, when Putin has started the war like on their behalf, they have to do a very complicated exercise in reflection. They have to say it to themselves, this is because of me, this is my guilt, this is my fault, I was silent, I didn't vote, I didn't participate in politics, I didn't participate in anti-corruption rallies and so on, and because of my silence, now this war has become possible. So an ordinary person can't admit this normally, so they stick to those propaganda cliches. We had to do it because otherwise they would invade first. We had to do it because of like Nazis' biological labs or whatever. These cliches, when they use them to talk, it's a form like of self-protection, of protecting their integrity from becoming insane, from admitting their guilt. And this is not a bulletproof vest. This propaganda protection is a creme brulee crust. If you knock on it like a little bit, if you talk to these people, if you persuade them, if you spend time with them, if you explain to them what's actually happening in their name and quasi like on their behalf, they begin to talk and they begin to change their attitude. It is possible, we know it. So from the very first day of the war, we have launched like a media operation, like an independent YouTube channel with like political news, expert interviews, countering propaganda, like anti-fake investigations and so on. It now has a reach of almost 20 million people, 20 million unique monthly viewers. It's the largest independent media operation in Russian language, done by unprofessionals, by the Anti-Corruption Foundation. Like I myself was doing a broadcast on this channel, and all my colleagues did so. Then we hired also some professional journalists, but we started it like a makeshift amateurish operation. But it was so enormously important just to tell the truth. And we saw so much demand from Russian people to figure out what's actually going on, to hear like different opinion, not only the propaganda. That, well, 20 million is comparable to largest Putin's TV channels. So there is a demand for independent information. It is possible to talk to Russian people and to explain to them what's going on, and it's very important, it's crucial. To change their attitude towards the war means a very efficient tool actually to stop the war. Because, well, army is part of the society. When the society changes its attitude towards the war, it affects also the morale of the army. When the soldiers will like become messages from home that you don't belong there, go home, this is not your war, you don't need to be there, this will make a difference. And that's what we're trying to achieve.
Putin, of course, is fighting on two fronts, of course, against the Ukrainians, but he's also increased the repression so much at home during this with, as you mentioned, the prison sentences. What can you do, what can we do to kind of reverse that completely direction towards an even more authoritarian state?
Well, the repression against people in Russia is enormous. Russia has thousands of political prisoners, and yeah, the pressure is really like nothing before. That's very clear. We did not understand, actually, I have to admit, like why, for instance, Putin decided like to poison Alexey Navalny in 2020, to shut down all independent media in the country in 2021, and to shut down all offices of opposition organizations. Now, on February 24th, we learned he was preparing to the war. He wanted to make sure there is no organized dissent, no organized opposition, no organized political force back in the country. So the only way, of course, to help opposition in Russia is now, and the opposition in civil society, is to defeat Putin. This is the world war against Putin, who presents the most grave threat to the world since Hitler, and also he has nukes. We don't have to forget about it. And this is indeed a war that has to be fought on many fronts. There is a military front where, like, Ukrainian armed forces resist the aggression, but there is an economic front where sanctions have to be applied not to let Putin fund his war. And yeah, well, oil embargo that finally has passed as a sixth package is, well, not sufficient because it's too little, too late. Europe has to pay its part of the cost, whatever Europe will pay, even if, like, oil prices and gas prices will go higher. The cost that Ukrainian people are paying is higher in any case. So we didn't do enough to stop Putin in previous 8 years. So unfortunately, now everyone has to bear this cost. And then apart from the economic front, there is this informational front where we're trying to fight, where we are addressing Russian society, Russian people, so to leave Putin isolated, toxic, without support. We are addressing both Russian people with our information operation, with our media operation, and Russian elite with our sanction list and sanction proposals. I don't believe that Putin could be defeated on one front, but if we apply enough of pressure on all three of them, then, I mean, he will be defeated.
And what is Achilles' heel? You've done so much on anti-corruption, which I want to salute, and we saw in the Democracy Perception Index as well that corruption is globally as well something that really people, of course, see as a great threat to democracy. Do you think that's through that that you've been doing with your foundation?
Well, this is, I believe, the most important, like, legacy of the Anti-Corruption Foundation's work. Yeah, we have explored Russian corruption, the phenomenon of enormous Putin's corruption for 10 years. And we have proven, like mathematically proven, that corruption transforms to dictatorship. And there is no other option for them. Like, a corrupt regime has no choice but to silence free press because they can't afford to get, like, investigated. They have no choice but to dismantle judiciary system because they can't afford to get challenged in courts. They have no choice but to steal elections because they can't allow to get outvoted. And at some point of time, when nothing helps, their approval ratings are going down. They realize things are going very bad for them. They have no choice but to try to start, like, a small victorious war, just like to distract public opinion, to get some support, and to make people not ask questions about their corruption. This is exactly what happened in our country, unfortunately, but it happened in other countries also before. But this situation is unique because it happened already in the 21st century. It was all on YouTube, all documented by Anti-Corruption Foundation, by investigative journalists. We know the pattern, and of course lessons have to be learned not to let this pattern repeat after Putin in our country and in other countries as well.
Great. Leonid, Volkov, thanks for being here with On Stage. Thanks for your tireless work.